Hello and welcome to The Art of Aging, which is part of the Abundant Aging podcast series from United Church Homes. On this show, we look at what it means to age in America and in other places around the world with positive and empowering conversations that challenge, encourage, and inspire everyone, everywhere to age with abundance. Today, I am so pleased to welcome Kirsten Ajax to the show. And Kirsten is a third-year graduate student studying drama therapy at Kansas State University. And we're going to be talking today about applications of drama therapy for older adults. Very cool. She's the graduate research assistant at the K-State Spectrum Center, a student committee representative for the North American Drama Therapy Association's student committee, and a student member of the Kansas Counseling Association. Kirsten is originally from the East Coast. She received her BFA from the University of Arts in Philadelphia and has worked as an actor, a teaching artist, and educator for over 18 years. She's passionate about supporting people with equity, equality, and communication, fostering healthy environments for creative success. Kirsten is a UCL Arts and Healing alum, receiving her SEA Facilitator Certification in Social Emotional Learning. And as an SEA, she facilitates emotional awareness, utilizing trauma-informed creative approaches, honors verbal and non-speaking communication, neurodiversity, learning differences, and emphasizes self-care and stress management to maximize the benefit of arts on mental health. She currently interns with incarcerated women at the Topeka Correctional Facility, at Meadowlark Senior Living Facility in the Memory Care and Parkinson's Unit, and with Indian Hills Elementary School Special Education Department. Kirsten, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Man, well, you're just sort of applying drama therapy all over the place, you know, from inmates to kids to older adults. And just before we dive into it, just a reminder to our listeners that this podcast series is sponsored by United Church Homes' Ruth Frost Parker Center for Abundant Aging. And Kirsten, you certainly do promote abundant aging. So to learn more about the center, including our annual symposium in October of every year, visit unitedchurchhomes.org/Parker-Center. So again, getting back to it, Kirsten, I mean, you know, you could be doing a lot with drama therapy, and I know that you do this for a variety of different audiences, but you do have this, I think, interest with older adults. I mean, what's driving your passion there?
Absolutely. So I have always worked with the senior population. When I was younger, I was a certified arthritis instructor. I was a certified AEA water aerobics instructor, and I was a silver sneakers instructor. So working with the senior population has just been very, very natural for me. It just kind of feels good. It feels right. I was also the youngest in my family for forever. I was surrounded by much older, wiser people. I grew up with an older sister, and then my father is the youngest of his family. So I was just always the youngest. And you know, we can look at that as a bad thing, but I looked at it as really a great thing because it was such sage wisdom that I got always from different people. And I was surrounded by these artifacts and these gorgeous antiques and all of these different stories that I was told throughout my childhood about how this came from this place or we did this at this time. And it really impacted a lot on me about how important it is to keep that generational respect and that generational communication alive. My grandmother, who was the youngest of her siblings, passed away when she was 101. My great aunt passed away when she was 103, and my other great aunt passed away when she was 105. So growing up with, much older and wiser people than I was as a child, I looked up to their stories about the Great Depression, and I looked at different things that they had to do and the struggles that they had to go through. And it was very empowering to learn about that. So it was a natural transition for me to want to work with seniors and be a part of the senior community.
Wow, that is, it's so interesting to sort of, very few of us have really grown up with that sense of kind of, history, right? That through line of storytelling and with objects. On an earlier podcast, we had the founders of Artifacts, which is a startup that really tried. We did it. The episode was on Swedish death cleaning, and I know that sounds really kind of morbid. I know, but the idea is that you have these things in your home. And if you can share stories around those things, then those things become more valuable so that people want them. And the story they told was around like a dinner service. And I guess one of the ladies, her, I think parents or grandmother was a diplomat in Africa. in the 50s and 60s, and they had to get their own china set. So they brought it over from France. And these days, people don't want these old china sets, but with the story, it then has new
Yeah.
context, and then everybody kind of wants that china. So it must be, I guess it must be hard to get rid of stuff in your
Oh
house.
yeah, I actually have my grandmother's china. I do.
Yes.
I have it. I have certain things that I've kept because there is such a sentimental value. When I was a child, we had this curio kind of secretary, and it had all of the non-important antiques, I would say, from when my grandfather was in the war. And he brought back all of these artifacts from different places, and there was different money from different countries. And I got to play with it. I was allowed to take everything out and look at it and play with it. So it was so important and so precious. But I was also allowed to play with it and kind of be rough with it because it wasn't like the very important, antiques. So I kind of gained this love of older things and of things that are beyond me, that have a story that I want to know about.
Yeah, yeah, and I want to get into this concept of drama therapy, especially with older adults. But the first, I just want to, were you always an actress? Were you always somebody that wanted to perform and to sort of to just really express yourself in that way?
I was, yeah. I'm a redhead, so very much a beacon wherever I go. People see me. So it was kind of a thing as a child that I really stood out, and I really just wanted to be around people and talk and engage. My earliest memory of performing or wanting to perform, I was in preschool, and we had our Christmas concert, and I apparently must have taken over something because they didn't reprimand me. They supported me, and they gave me a sign that said director. And so I got to I was an angel, in the Christmas pageant. And instead of just having this angel, I had a sign that said director. And it was so important because I was fostered at such a young age that performing was important. It was important, and what you can say means things, and people will listen. So yeah, since I was a very young child, I've always wanted to communicate and to act things out and play. We didn't have a pool growing up. We didn't have any sort of watering hole by where I grew up. But I did get to go to the YMCA in the summers. And during the winter, I would create pool scenes in my house, and I would dive off the coffee table, and everything was always embodied and physical with me. So it was a natural progression for me to go into theater and to go into acting because I loved it. I loved being able to get up there and communicate stories and impact people in a positive way. And that's how I always went about, theater and acting, was that if you feel something, we're doing our job. You don't always have to feel great about it. You don't always have to love it. But if you leave the theater feeling something, that means that we, as the actors, directors, playwrights, we've done our job. So that's kind of how I progressed, and I ended up teaching theater. I taught creative movement, makeup, directing, monologue work, and it just kind of progressed like that. So I was a teaching artist, I was a professional actor, I was a figure model. I did pretty much everything that you can do in the industry.
Gotcha. And then now you're doing drama therapy. So what is drama therapy?
Absolutely. So drama therapy has its roots very, very far back, probably like the 40s or the 50s, with psychodrama and Jacob Moreno. And Jacob Moreno is considered like the father of psychodrama. But Gert Shatner wanted to change things, wanted to do it a little bit differently. So drama therapy has been around for a long time, but it didn't actually become recognized as a therapeutic modality until the late 70s. So we are somewhat of a fledgling, modality, but it has its roots so far back of performing and helping within different populations, within different diversities, all over the world. So drama therapy, it's an embodied practice, and it is active and experiential, and it provides context for clients to tell their stories, set goals, and solve problems by expressing feelings and then achieving catharsis. The drama and the breadth and the depth that we have of our inner experience can be actively explored, and the interpersonal relationship and skills can be enhanced. And some of our core processes that we have in drama therapy are dramatic projection, embodiment, role playing and personification, playing, which is a wonderful thing. We all need that in life. The drama life connection, and then transformation. And so we're under the umbrella of the creative and expressive art therapies, such as dance and movement, art therapy, music therapy. We are under that umbrella of expressive and creative arts therapies.
Gotcha. And now that we're talking, specifically about older people. What sort of context is that approach? I mean, how do people approach you? I mean, what are you helping your clients really generally work through, without sort of being too invasive for anyone's particular situation? But what sort of situations are you finding yourself in that you're helping older people kind of work through with drama?
Absolutely. So we are a strengths-based approach. We don't come at our clients as any sort of deficit-based, and we believe that everyone has the ability. Everybody has strengths, regardless of how small or how untapped they are. As drama therapists, we really look at community and the community building that is really inherent in all of us and the need for it. So something that I really wanted to focus on with my seniors is community building skills, because it's something that's so important and that really gets lost as we age. We move away, we change where we live, we lose people in our lives. So that sense of community that we once had really starts to fail away or fall away. And so drama therapy really helps activate that community building sense that we all need in life. It also works on pro-social behavior. So those helping skills, those listening skills, those awareness skills of other people. And as we age, we have different cognitive things that happen to us, different cognitive declines. So drama therapy really helps a lot with our executive functioning. And it helps with our working memory. It helps with sequencing. It helps with rhythms and patterns. And then there's emotional regulation. And those are kind of my four things that I really focus on. Emotional regulation is something that everyone can use regardless of our age. There's going to be moments in time that we don't feel okay. Our lid's about to blow off and we're really upset or we're really sad and we're not able to get to a regulated state, which, we require in life to have that regulated state so that we can communicate properly. So drama therapy helps the seniors build those skills that, maybe they had, maybe they didn't have, but it's like a refresher. I like to call it PE for the brain, right? It's your gym time for your brain. It's going to help you. It's going to build those skills, or maybe it's going to revitalize those skills. We use lots of different techniques, specifically with seniors. Some of them are time slip stories, which is created by a wonderful professor in Milwaukee. Playback theater. We use things such as yes and that's a big one. Yes and. We don't say no. No is that really negative connotation of no. Yes and. Why not? Yes and it all. We can yes and everything. We use ethnodramas. We use improvisation. We work with creativity and co-creativity. And that's something that's really important too, is to build the skills of the other individuals around you. Yeah. Working in memory care and Parkinson's, we, often forget that these things are so important for enriching our lives. Our creativity enriches our lives. There has been a lot of times that I have been in senior facilities and it's, you wish better, you want better, you want better for these people. And it was something that was a drive for me. And we have a great facility here in Manhattan, Kansas. It's phenomenal. So they're doing wonderful things. Mm-hmm. But I just wanted to bring that drama therapy, that drama life connections to the seniors, especially in Parkinson's and memory care and their caregivers, because it's stressful. It is stressful and hard and difficult to go through life with the myriad of things that we have, but then add on to it Parkinson's or dementia or Alzheimer's, it's even more stressful. Mm-hmm. So if you just get 1 hour or an hour and a half of your week that you get to come to a group, sit and talk, maybe explore something that's going on, have that support system, do something fun and engaging, and get your brain going in a positive way, there's nothing better than that.
Absolutely. My gosh. There's. You just said quite a lot there. I'm just fascinated by sort of different elements of what you are working on. But let's go through a couple of these, maybe one by one. So when we talk about community building, and I think it's interesting to me because I guess I've seen sort of graphs on, how much time are you going to spend with other people in your life and how much time are you going to spend by yourself. And as you look at this graph, the time spent by yourself once you get north of age 70 just is up there, right? So and we all know, social isolation in itself may not be negative for certain people, but many people do experience negative effects of being isolated. And so when you talk about rebuilding a sense of community, is it done within that reflection that maybe this is the time where people are losing people that they've known all their lives and suddenly they don't know how to start again? I don't know if I'm just putting words in your mouth here, but
No, yeah.
what is that context, and what specific types of exercises do you like to do to rebuild that sense of community?
Absolutely. So one of the exercises that we use, one of the interventions is storytelling, right? And you have so many contexts within storytelling, but there's a really fun one, and it always kind of gets messy, and it always kind of ends up just collapsing in a laughter ball. And if that's what you're really looking for, right? You're not looking for perfection. You're not looking for this detailed, intricate story. You're looking for those individuals to make the eye contact with each other and to listen and to hear and have an awareness that they are part of something bigger than just themselves. So it's called one word story. And you go
Okay.
around and everybody just says one word. And it's so funny, and it goes in the craziest places, and there's really no rhyme or reason to it, but you just kind of let it go. And then you go to the next level and you do one sentence, right? And then we go on and on. And then what I like to do is incorporate musical instruments into it. So I like to incorporate musical sound bites or instruments, whatever it may be. And then that adds another layer of a different part of our brain that we're accessing, right? So I always like to layer on not just the community building, but what else can we get from this, right? So we've got this sense that we need community. It's super important. But what is holding us back from having that community? Is it cognitive delays, cognitive functioning? Is it emotions that we're not able to express? Is it our lack of awareness of others? So it goes in even deeper when I do my work about thinking how the nuances of each individual coming into that room experiences life. How are they experiencing their life in that moment? And it is a really difficult process to think that maybe some people do want isolation. Maybe some people do need this. But when we come together as a community, we have this amazing experience of support, togetherness, and we can fail, we can make mistakes, and we'll still have that support. We'll still be able to say, hey, can I look to you? And I know you're going to be there for me. And that's what I try to really hone in on in my groups, is that we are a support system. We are together. We're going to have bad days. We're going to have days where there's a conflict. There's a difficult situation that one person is not seeing eye to eye in, but that's also community. That's part of what happens in community. Working on those conflict resolution skills, working on seeing others for who they are and what they can bring to the table. So I would think that community is one of the most important things that I do in my work. But I think it's one of the most important things for people in general, regardless of age. And it's hard, especially when we do get up there in age. We do isolate. So from my past, everything was always community. It was always about community exercise, community engagement. So it was just a natural progression for me to add that community building skill in such a prominent factor in my work.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking about, you've had the opportunity to kind of do this with younger people, older people. I'm wondering, if there is a through line within all these different age groups that you see. Like, I'll give you an example. Like, we do human-centered design workshops with our residents, and I've done the same type of workshops where you just like sit down, you come up with ideas, you qualify the ideas, lots of the yes and principle that you were talking about, setting the stage, and so we have one day of just really expansive thinking around these ideas. And it's like $1,000 grants to enhance resident life is the context. So I'll just give them the $1,000 for a good idea. So we come up with tons of great ideas in the first day. Second day, we do a lot of reductive thinking to really hone down and come up with the best ones. And the energy that I feel from people in their 80s, 90s, hundreds, doing this exercise, the creative energy seems to me to be very, very similar. The vibe that I get, to when we do those exact same exercises with people in their 40s, their 50s, their 30s. And it's a really inspiring, I think, through line when you talk about the creative energy within us not necessarily dying, that's sort of having this constant. And I'm wondering, when you're talking about creative expression, when you have the opportunity to sort of see people of all ages go through the exercises and the icebreakers and the things like that do you describe, do you see the same consistency? Is there any variation? I mean, what do you see when you talk about what sort of through lines do you see with your work when you work with different age groups?
Yeah, sure. So it's really interesting because therapy in general for the older demographic has had really stigmatized. It's been stigmatized for years. It's there. We still have this concept that it's only for schizophrenics, or it's only for the severely mentally afflicted. The reality is therapy is beneficial for all individuals, regardless of their mental health. It's just a beneficial thing. We have a lot of data that demonstrates how good it is for, your cognitive functioning, for your emotional regulation, for all of that. But the difference is that younger generations don't necessarily have as much of that stigma. And it's because we are always at the pulse. We have everything at our fingertips, right? We've got better health online. You can just go on an app and say, I need to talk to someone. I can message you, or I can call you, or I can email you. Well, seniors don't have that thought process. They don't have that because it wasn't promoted like it is for the younger generation. So there is a little bit of a block, right? There's a little bit of block. Oh, no, I don't need that. That's for these people. I don't need that. But then once you get through that block, and it does take some time, it does take a lot of trust building. And that's that therapeutic relationship that I work really hard on, a lot of empathetic listening and building those connections and relationships to support that trust. Once we break down that wall, that you don't have to be severely mentally ill to use therapy as a resource, as a tool. So once we break that down, the leaps and bounds that I see my seniors make is it's profound, it's beautiful, it's wonderful, and they tap right back in. You see that inner child come out, and it's just like boom, they're there. They know it. They didn't lose it. It's just gotten a little bit damped down because of life, because of stress, because of responsibilities. We can't climb a tree when we're 90, or maybe we can. Maybe that tree can be a
We don't advise
metaphorical
it, but
tree. Maybe we can. We don't have to put those parameters of like, oh no, I can't do that because that would be silly. Yeah, it would be silly. But what if that silly's okay?
Mhm.
What if that silly made you feel so good inside that you remembered something about your childhood that made you feel that good about that moment too? So it's about tapping in to the creativity that we all have.
Yeah, yeah.
We say a lot of times that this person's artistic or right brained, or this person's this and they're artistic and they're creative. We all have the potential to be creative. Every single individual, regardless if you're an accountant or, a CEO, we all can be creative. We don't have to be an actor. We don't have to be, a dancer. We can be creative in our own thinking and problem solving. So I really try to stress that with my seniors, because it does seem that with, some of the younger generations, they got a little bit more of that social, emotional aspects in their education. And our seniors didn't. They didn't get that when they were at their, very prime foundational age, which is not necessarily a deficit, but I see it as an opportunity. I see it as an opportunity to give that to them, to show them that, look at what you can do. Look at what you have inside of you. So it really is not that much different. It's just about getting past those blocks that we put up.
Yeah, and you know what's going through my mind now is that you talk about younger versus older and younger generations. Again, digital tools are there, the stigma is not there, and then I'm trying to think. People have, I think, need for therapy due to, I don't know. Let me see if I can put this into something that makes sense. If I'm somebody at 25 years old who's seeking therapy, I'm seeking therapy maybe for things I'm trying to work out because I may not have had the life experience to be a cushion for me to react against that experience, and to put it in context with other things that may have gone on in my life. And also the recency that maybe some of these things that are trauma informed or what have you happened to me 10 years ago,
Hmm.
or 15 years ago. And then you have maybe the same situation with older adults where both they have this whole life experience to kind of be reflective on that, and then they also have maybe the thing that is still causing them trauma,
Sure.
you know, where mental health services were not as well regarded back then, but also the distance between the time of trauma and the time of therapy, maybe 40, 50, 60 years, and I'm just wondering if you have any reflections on that, if it's still real to it's like, how do you see these trauma events being kind of like managed with people that may be in their 80s versus maybe people in their 20s?
Sure. So when dealing with trauma, trauma is different for every individual. Someone can experience an event, let's say a car crash, and one person is in that car and doesn't have anything wrong with them. They're fine. They leave walking away with nothing. And that same person that experienced that car crash has severe trauma from it, right? Maybe they develop PTSD or CPTSD, or maybe they just have some really difficult times from there. So it's very individual based. You have to look at it from the client's perspective and what they're going through. When we work in drama therapy, we try to really listen to our clients and, again, building those strengths. So what I would do is listen and see where there's a choice point for me to come in, where there's a little opening, just open up that book and say, hey, remember when you did that as a kid? What does that sound like now? Can we go back to that person? Can we give that person a little bit of love? Can we think about how that child may need or may not have received the support that they need? And sometimes it doesn't always work. Sometimes it's great. Sometimes we get right to it and we're right in there. And sometimes it takes that brilliant, wonderful support of the community and the group around them to say, you got this. You can do it. And I have seen it time and time again when someone is sitting down next to somebody and they think, this is so silly. I can't do this. I can't go back there. I don't want to do that. And someone else says, I'm doing it. Let's try it together. And it's that support network that you have. And also the perspective of someone else your age being like, I experienced that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have that universality. Look at us all. We all experience that. So it's really an awareness and a reflection that they can see themselves in the eyes of others who have actually experienced the same, maybe trauma, maybe stressors, or maybe just life experiences. So I never force anyone to go back to, your inner child or that event. That would be unethical of myself and of therapy in general. But we do a lot of narrative work, right? We do a lot of storytelling and we build our narratives about how we're going to approach this. An example that I have is, and I will definitely leave out names and all
Yeah, of
descriptors.
course.
But a wonderful client that I had was dealing with a lot of physical issues, which brought up some abuse things that had happened in their past. So we looked at it as, how do we get from point A to point B? And instead of just saying, we're didactically talking, yeah, point A to point B, here's what you do. No, we physically embodied it. We put down on the floor these little circles that I have, and each step was how to get from this point A to this point B. And we want to get to point B and we want to get there in a healthy, safe, and supported manner. Maybe we didn't get there that way the first time we went through it, but this time we're going to. And the way that we get there is by eliciting the help of the other individuals within the room. So I have other individuals come up, they stand in this particular life event spot on the floor, and they enroll in what that person needs. So maybe they're trying to get disability, right? And they are really struggling. And each step of the way, it's been incredibly hard for them to get their disability. What was that first step? What did you encounter? Why was it so hard? What supports did you need at that time?
Mm-hmm.
And then we get those support systems in there and we tell that person, this is what you may have needed and this is what you're going to get this time. And then we go to the next step, right? Okay, how difficult was it for you to reach going to the office to be able to get there? What was the difficulties? Was it transportation? Was it not feeling so well that day? Did you feel that you couldn't get there? And I didn't have support last time. Now you do. Now you have support. What do you need? Oh, you need to call friends who can give you a ride. Come on over, friend. And then another participant will come over and give that support. So it's really retraining ourselves. It's saying, I needed that. I didn't get it, but now I can get it. And I can look at that event, trauma, stressor in a different way. Because now I'm building the skills to say to myself, I can ask for help. I can get what I need by eliciting all the community members around me. And I don't have to be stuck in a trauma cycle or a trigger cycle that's going to keep me going on the same path.
Is that
So it
because
didn't,
someone would sort of blame themselves for the?
yes,
That's it, isn't it? Right, and that's it, and sort of realizing that you weren't aware of certain options.
right?
You made the bet. You were doing the best for yourself at that time with what you had. It's I guess there's a lot of sort of self forgiveness and self awareness
Yep.
in that exercise, right?
Absolutely. It's about building resiliency and showing them that they already have the resiliency. And it's just tapping back in and saying, it's okay that this didn't go exactly how it was supposed to go because now we can do it again and it can be the way that you need it to be.
Is there any sort of I should be more resilient at this age? I should have better skills at this age. I mean, just is that ever come up, or is that just, or do people just? I mean, these are just people going through situations like
Yeah,
everybody does at any age, right?
sure. Absolutely. Yeah, we definitely experience that. And I know that I personally have experienced that where people question like, why can't I get this right? Why is it so difficult for me to achieve this? And I try to reinforce for all my clients that life's a journey. You are going to ebb and flow, and you are going to be at a really high peak sometimes and a really low valley sometimes. We're not perfect. We make mistakes, and the imperfections that we have actually make us a more richer, unique individual for our community.
Hmm.
So one pitfall you may have experienced may help someone else in the room. It may help someone else see that, wow, I have that resiliency inside of me. I didn't think that I did, but I just helped them get through that. I can do that for myself. So it's a lot of reflection. It's a lot of looking at ourselves as more capable than we really are. Especially as we age, we get stuck in patterns. We get stuck in, the mundane things that bombard us and, weigh us down. And in drama therapy, we get to shed it off, at least for an hour and a half. We can shed it off. And in the confines of that room, anything goes. Anything can go. And the support that we can have builds that resiliency, reawakens the tools and techniques that we once thought we had and then we lost. It mobilizes people to be better for each other. And that's really important to me as a practitioner, but it's important to all people to see that we have those abilities inside of ourselves.
So what strikes me, Kirsten, is when you're talking about community, you're talking about everyone. You're identifying people's individual gifts, so to speak, their experiences, their skills. You're highlighting them and sort of allowing the community to foster and grow within your therapy environment. And it strikes me that as if we're talking about people that are older in general, we're talking about a group that may be at risk for this feeling of loss of identity, that I am now more physically limited. I'm going from being independent to more dependent, that I am, I had a career, I was raising my family. Now I'm in this position, and I may have to leave my home for a new community. And am I going to lose my identity? Is that a theme that you see coming up with the people that are in your programs? And what might you do to maybe restore that sense of identity?
Yeah, absolutely. So it is a very common theme. We experience that a lot. So honoring each individual, right, is something that, and very much for the senior generation is, yeah, there was not that much of that going on. They really didn't have a moment to shine in that kind of way because it was so collective. It was so up and down and rocky within our history. If we look at it, how many times we have been displaced from war, from upheaval in our country. So there wasn't really a moment in time in our history where these seniors could say, hey, it's all about me. It's all about me right now. This is my identity. It's all about me. So there is some of that reinventing and looking into it, and then honoring, witnessing, and respecting the path that they've chosen.
Hmm.
You were a doctor, and you were a really great doctor, and now you still have those skills. You may not be in practice anymore, but now we're going to use those skills, and how can we use them in a different way to benefit you and benefit your community at current moment? So it's not taking someone's identity and saying, well, now you're a senior and that's all you have. That's it. We're
Right.
done. Right?
Right.
It's empowering them. It's showing them that their resiliency is so much stronger than they believe, and that the skills that they gained from being a myriad of things, being a mother, being a writer, being, a nurse, whatever they were in their life, is still beneficial to this day. And it's about also training, teaching, and psychoeducation of the facility workers as well. It's
Yes.
very important. We have to maintain that just because a therapist or a counselor does this within the therapy session, it has to continue. It has to continue within the environment that they live in. And that's a big factor that I try really hard to push with all environments that I go to. If we're going to, walk the walk, preach the talk, then we have to support that from the underlining foundation. And that means that if seniors ask questions, we're not going to reprimand them. We're not going to say, today is not the time for you to ask that question. It's not what we're doing. It may be, yeah, I have that question too. Why don't we seek that information out? It's about empowering them. It's about seeing them for who they are and the wisdom that they give us. They give us so many stories, and they give us so many life experiences. I'll never know what it's like to, experience some of the things that these individuals had. I'll never know. I wasn't born. How could I ever experience that? So it's really honoring them. And I think that that's for all people. We need to honor them and respect and witness and really validate their existence.
Yeah.
So we're not changing. We're not saying that you can still be this profession. We're being honest. We're saying that was something that you did do and you were great at it. And it's so part of your personality. It's part of your life force. What can you take from that experience for now in your world and in your community to benefit you and the community? Because I've worked with some amazing ex-teachers, and there is just this thing that we get as a teacher that I was. We know we have these little things, and I'm like, you were a teacher, weren't you? And they're like, I was. How did you know? It's like, oh, because there's these little things that we know, the way that you put your pens or the way that you stack your papers. It's just these little nuances. And then once you get past, that barrier that you may have, then it opens up and they're like, let me tell you about this story. I want to tell you about this child that I had. Oh, how did you help them? Oh, well, we worked so hard on their spelling and their math. And, I created this mnemonic device for them and it helped. And I was like, how can you apply that today? Could you help someone with that today? And, oh, no, that's my old life. I don't do that. But you do. You
Yeah.
help your community right here in this room. You're helping organize the books in the library to make it more efficient for all of the, different residents to view. That is a skill that you have. So it's really about honoring, witnessing, validating, and appreciating all that they can offer.
And that's tremendous. And you said something before about obviously people that work in facilities, and you also mentioned earlier that you are starting to work with kind of like that caregiver care recipient. The fancy term is dyad, but
Yes.
those pairings. So and I think this is probably the last question that I wanted to ask you about the drama therapy before we move on to the three questions we always ask our guests. But what is fascinating to you? I mean, what are you noticing about therapy when you do get caregivers and care recipients together? What does that fabric look like?
Oh, it's beautiful. I'm not going to get emotional because we're not supposed to, but it's so beautiful. I worked with a husband and wife, and they really were lacking in communication, and they were very strong marriage, worked their whole lives, really put forth a lot to their marriage, but there was a communication breakdown. And this caregiver is like a prize fighter. She was in that corner ready to go anytime. But my other client wasn't being heard because his emotion wasn't being validated of feeling scared or feeling worried about the future and how he couldn't give what he once did to his wife. But she would just like, no, we're going to do this. Just keep moving forward. Everything's fine. And it broke the communication down completely, where they were just kind of walking these two separate paths in life. We got into the therapy room and we really started to break it down and say, hey, are we listening to each other? Are we really validating our emotions? Yes, your, modus operandi might be to go right to fixing that situation, but maybe he doesn't need that right now. Maybe what he needs is for you to just hear him and see that he may be a little scared about the future. And when we had that moment, and this is just one example, but when that moment happened, it was beautiful. It was beautiful to see a senior couple be able to say, wow, this is so important. Where did we lose this? We just got it back, though. We just got it back. And there it is. And it was that aha moment that all therapists are like, there it is. It's that beautiful moment where you are reaching, your therapeutic goals, you're reaching your treatment goals, and you're seeing it in fruition. You're seeing it happen in front of your face. So I personally believe that all people have the ability to have that therapeutic catharsis where they can have that moment and say, I just had that and it really impacted me and I can change for the better now.
Wow, and what a terrific! And for you to be an enabler of that must be so satisfying for you, and must be just such a terrific driver to kind of like get you through the next day and the next day and the next day as you continue to evolve your practice. Goodness, you're doing all this, and you're still both a teacher and a student. And I think that it would do everyone well if we were to reconnect. Once you kind of get more into your practice and you discover
Yes.
more things to figure out more of these really cool, interesting tips and tricks and modalities you're learning around engaging older adults. So thank you so much. But you're not off the hook yet. No, there
Okay.
are three questions.
Yes.
There are three questions we'd like to ask every guest on the show about their own experience with aging. And would you mind if I ask those questions of you?
Of course, please.
All right. So, Kirsten, question number one: when you think about how you yourself have aged, what do you think has changed about you or grown with you that you really like about yourself?
I really believe that I don't have to be sorry anymore, that I don't have to feel guilty. And when that guilt comes up, I can see it, identify it, and say, nah, I'm who I am, and I'm here for a reason, and I have something to say. So when we're growing up and when we're trying to figure out who we are, especially as a woman, there's a lot of guilt associated with this and where we go with our lives. And, oh, should I do this? Should I not do that? I don't care anymore. I am who I am. You're going to like me. You're not going to like me. And that's okay, because I really don't need the validation of someone who doesn't want to be around me, doesn't, support me. So it really is letting go of that guilt and really respecting who I am and honoring the fact that I bring a lot to the table and not questioning it so much. Just saying, yes, and, right? It's the yes and effect.
Exactly.
Yes and.
Oh man, that's healthy. What a wonderful perspective. All right, question number two, though. What has surprised you the most about you as you've aged?
Yeah, so I was thinking about this, and it's hard because I used to care so much about others and how they affected me, but I realized that people will change and some people won't change. And so it was hard to realize that I may be changing for the better, but other people may be staying the same. So I guess that's kind of, it's hard, but letting go of some of those relationships, or maybe they change and you have to honor that is how the relationship's going to be. It's difficult. It's not easy because you have this thought in your mind that your best friend since third grade will be there forever. But sometimes it's healthy to let that go and say, they're a different person. They're doing their own thing. They're doing great. And now I'm this person. and I need to keep on this path because it's doing great for me. So relationships, recognizing when to let them go, when to hold on to them. Yeah, it's been a big one.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. And now for our third question and final question. So, Kirsten, is there someone that you've met or been in your life that has really set a good example for you in aging? It's like, I want to be like them when I grow up. Does anybody come to mind?
Absolutely. There is this amazing woman. Her name is Helen. And I worked with her at the Jewish Community Center in Denver when I was teaching water aerobics. And she was an inspiration. She was a spitfire. She was just so ready to take the world on at any moment. She would come every single day to my water aerobics class, and she would be right in front of me, right in front row every time. And she was this very little lady, just very little. And you could just tell inside of her that she had so much life and so much gusto. I think she was like 83 when I knew her.
Yes.
And she was part of the Freedom Riders in the civil rights movement. And she
Very
helped.
cool.
Yeah, so she helped a lot of individuals at that time, and she championed, equality and equity even back in the 50s and the 40s. Like, she was there. She was on the front line helping people and engaging with people. And I look back and I think that's exactly who I want to be. I never want to stop learning. I never want to stop being active, and I never want to stop caring about doing good for others. And she didn't. She always did. There was this one time where I needed a card table for something. And I asked my water aerobics group, was like, does anyone have a card table? Right away, she's like, I have two. You're going to come over tonight, and I'm going to give you both of them, and you can keep them for as long as you need. And it was just so matter of fact, I'm going to help you. I have this resource. I can provide it. No worries. And that consistent giving and loving and caring of others is something I always want to have. I always want that for myself because it made her a beautiful person. And I want to be that when I get older.
That is what a great barometer for you. What a great example for us. This is abundant aging. And thank you for bringing that to life for us, Kirsten. And thank you for sharing, your knowledge, your gifts, your talents, just really describing this world of drama therapy that is only going to get more and more popular. It's only going to get more needed as all of us age, right? And as we start moving through the different generations and the different generational, reactions to therapies, and so there's a bright future ahead, I think, for you and for that. That this world. So thank you, but most of all, thanks you to our listeners. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in and giving your time and listening to this episode of the Art of Aging, which is part of the Abundant Aging podcast series from United Church Homes. And we want to hear from you. How has your perspective on aging changed as you yourself have aged? What do you think of today's topic? How do you see drama therapy being beneficial for you and those that you care for and love? Talk to us, communicate with us, abundantagingpodcast.com. Please share your ideas. And you can also give us feedback when you visit the Ruth Frost Parker Center at www.unitedchurchhomes, #Parker-Center. You can find these and other podcasts at abundantagingpodcast.com or on YouTube by searching under United Church Homes. And most importantly, Kirsten, where can people find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. You can also find me on Facebook. And then I am also associated with the NADTA student representative. And then I'm also part of the Kansas Counseling Association. So you can find me through that.
All right. So check Kirsten out and tune in for more episodes when we have them. Thank you again. We'll see you next time.